Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Ariff bin Aziz, and today our group will be talking about principle of cooperation. In this presentation, we will be looking at principle of cooperation and its 4 maxims, the 5 ways the maxims can be violated or flouted, and lastly, how Indonesian language suspend the maxim. The principle of cooperation is a principle proposed by the philosopher Paul Grice in 1975, whereby those involved in communication assume that both parties will normally seek to cooperate with each other to establish agreed meaning or understand what each is saying. This conversational cooperation even works when we are not being cooperative socially. For example, we can be arguing with one another angrily, and yet we will still cooperate quite a lot conversationally to achieve the argument. Grice formulated the principle of cooperation that underlies conversation as follows. Make your conversational contribution, such as is required, at the stage at which it occurs, by the accepted purpose or direction of the thought exchange in which you are engaged. The principle of cooperation contains 4 maxims that need to be followed in order to be cooperative and understood in conversation. Firstly, we have maxim of quality. Maxim of quality requires that the information provided in conversations to be genuine and justified. Here is an example of conversation that follows the maxim of quality. Juliet asks, "Do you know where Pago is?" Romeo answers, "Yes, Pago is in Johor." Romeo answers, "Follow the maxim of quality as it is true and can be proven." Second, we have maxim of quantity. Maxim of quantity requires we be as informative as necessary in order to communicate the intended meaning. So, include information that makes the meaning clear, but omit what does not. In other words, be concise. An example of conversation is, Jones asks, "How do I get from here to the nearest bookstore?" Smalling answers, "Keep walking straight until you reach the intersection and then turn right." Smalling answers follows the maxim of quantity as the amount of information given is enough to answer Jones' question. Third, we have maxim of relation. Maxim of relation requires that we talk about what is relevant in the conversation. An example of conversation is, Dean asks, "Where is my car key?" Sam answers, "It is on the table." Sam's answer is relevant since his answer is related to the question posed by Dean. Lastly, we have maxim of manner. Maxim of manner requires that we be clear, avoid ambiguities, be relatively brief, and organize our thoughts into a meaningful sequence. An example of where we can follow the maxim of manner is that when we talk to a child, we need to use simpler vocabulary, and we need to adjust our manner of speaking based on the information that we share with the hearer. And now, I would like to show an example of all maxim in a conversation. Tom asks, "Where is Spike?" And Jerry answers, "He is in his room, I'm sure." So, Jerry answers to Tom's question is sufficient, which is in accordance to the maxim of quantity, genuine, which relate to maxim of quality, relevant, which follows the maxim of relation, and clear and brief, which follows the maxim of manner. That's all for me. I will pass the floor to the next presenter.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Danial, and for the next part, I'm gonna present about how people violate maxims. Okay, there are certain situations in which people fail to observe the maxims. They may intentionally or unintentionally fail to follow the maxims because of their purpose of interaction. When people openly flout the maxim, people are able to identify and infer the extra meaning. Grice distinguishes what he calls sentence meaning from utterance meaning, and he refers to an utterance meaning indicated through a flout as an implication. But when people violate maxim quietly, it does not lead to implication since the listener is not aware of the violation. Here are the 5 ways the Christian maxims can be violated or flouted. Okay, scenario A. They may quietly violate a maxim. If so, in some cases they will be liable to mislead. The setting would be that a guest, wants to be nicer and friendlier. He smiles to B, a receptionist, and says hello politely. A dog comes and stands beside him. Then A asks B, "Does your dog bite?" And then B says no. A then immediately bends down to stroke it and gets bitten. "Oh, you said your dog does not bite," he reacted, and B simply replied, "That is not my dog." So here, B is actually not lying when he says that his dog at home does not bite. But in this case, B has violated the maxim of quantity by giving less information than is required by the hearer. He knows that A is talking about the dog besides B and not B's dog at home. As a result, B has misled A. Okay. For the second scenario, they may option out from the operation both the maxim and the cooperation principle. They may say, indicate or allow it to become plain that they are unwilling to cooperate in the way the maxim requires. The simple example for this is when you ask someone for information and they say, "I cannot say anymore, my lips are sealed." Okay, next. Next is that they may be faced by a clash. They may be unable, for example, to fulfill the first maxim of quantity, that is being as informative as is required, without violating the second maxim of quality, that is to have an adequate evidence for what you say. For instance, the speaker responds to the question, "Where is John?" with the following utterance: "He's either in the cafeteria or in his office." So we get this answer a lot when someone is not sure whether they are correct or not. So in this case, the maxim of quantity and the maxim of quality are in conflict. A cooperative speaker does not want to be ambiguous, but also does not want to give false information by giving a specific answer in spite of his uncertainty. By flouting the maxim of quantity, the speaker invokes the maxim of quality, leading to the implication that the speaker does not have evidence to give a certain answer to where John is. Okay, so next. Next is that they may flout a maxim, that is, they may blatantly fail to fulfill it. So, the first example would be flouting the maxim of quantity. So, Peter here is dressing up as his chef and he asks Mary, "Well, how do I look?" And Mary simply replied with, "Your shoes are nice." So, we get this answer a lot when we try to avoid the the question, whether we want to avoid answering it. So, we know that someone look absolutely horrendous and then uh, we just can't say that because we will hurt his or her feelings. So we avoided it by saying that his shoes are nice, his shoes are nice, just like that. So in this case, Mary has flouted the maxim of quantity by giving information less than required. Peter asks her, Peter asks her about his whole appearance, but Mary only refers to his shoes. She does not say directly that the shirt or his jeans looks nice, which means that she is not impressed, like I said before, with the rest of what he is wearing. To avoid offending Peter, Mary decides not to obey the maxim of quantity, thus Peter is forced to infer the hidden meaning of Mary's utterance. Okay, so the next would be that they would flouting the maxim of quality. When you tell a clumsy friend who has just taken a bad fall that her nimble gracefulness is impressive and obviously intend to mean the complete opposite, like this picture here. So you can see this implication is that you are not actually giving them compliment, but rather a sarcastic remark. We all do that sometimes, right? And so that is all from me. Thank you and have a great day.
Okay, hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Irfan bin AZIMI, and I will continue the presentation from Daniel just now with the last type of non-observant of a maxim, which is the suspension of maxim. Okay, firstly, the suspension of maxim happens when participants are not expecting the maxims to be fulfilled. This is due to the fact that the participants are withholding information that is to them are considered culturally necessary. As a matter of fact, this would not be seen as uncooperative by other members of the community because suspending a maxim does not generate an implicature to the members of the community in which this occurs. To explain this, we will look at how Indonesian language derived from principles of cooperation and its maxim. But first, we need to understand that every language community develops its own rules of community behavior, which became a part of their individual and group identity. For Indonesian language, their language usage are influenced by the cultural pattern of the language, which includes communication politeness, high context culture, and values of harmony in communication. The first cultural pattern of Indonesian language is that they highly value communicative politeness. For example, in an interview, okay, A says, manakah yang Anda pilih, menjadi model atau pemain sepak bola? And B replies with, saya lebih memilih menjadi pemain sepak bola ketimbang menjadi model. Menjadi seorang model dituntut untuk selalu berpenampilan sempurna karena masyarakat kita melihat model sebagai figur yang harus enak dilihat. So the translation of that would be A says, which one do you prefer, being a model or a football player? And B replies with, I prefer to be a football player but not being a model. Being a model means you have to be a perfect man because our society sees a model as an always a good looking figure. So in this interview, the speakers B violated the maximum quantity since they provided additional information instead of just sufficiently answering the question. But an empirical study shows that after having made their main conversations, Indonesian language speakers usually add even more information in order to expand their conversations due to communicative politeness reasons. So even though they violate the maximum of quantity, an implication is not generated since it is generally understandable that in the Indonesian culture, communicative politeness is highly valued. And for this case, additional information, adding additional information is considered polite. And thus, the answer given by speaker B is still remain cooperative to the communication. For the second one is the high context culture that plays a huge role in Indonesian cultural identity. High context culture is defined in such a way that most of the information is either in the physical context or initialized in the person, while only very little in the coded, explicit, or transmitted part of the message. High context communication is also indirect, ambiguous, harmony maintaining, reserved, and understated. An example of high context communication interaction can be seen in the following example. Okay, for example, A says, apakah Anda menyukai jenis musik ini? And B replies with, sebelumnya saya menyukai jenis musik pop. Akan tetapi kemudian saya lebih tertarik pada jenis musik dangdut ini. So the translation would be, A is basically asking B whether do you like this type of music, and B replies with, I like pop music before, but I was more interested in this dangdut music. So basically the speaker B answer is a violation of the maxim of manner since the answer is ambiguous or vague in nature. Instead of saying no, I don't like it, speaker B makes her contribution in an unclear way and intends for her partner to understand what she's trying to say. So one important aspect that should be noticed in this conversation is that speaker B was a pop singer, and that it is a pride for some singers in Indonesia. She might have thought that she would be happy by becoming a pop singer, but then she found that dangdut is more interesting. Okay, related to this example and also the last cultural pattern of Indonesian language is the values of harmony in communication. To promote values of harmony in communication, Indonesian people do not engage in face-threatening act, but rather they choose a face-saving act in order to avoid conflict. So following the previous example just now, speaker B tried to make the conversation goes in a way that avoid a face-threatening act. If they had expressed their opinions more directly, their words may be interpreted as a threat to speaker A's face, which is highly frowned upon in the Indonesian culture. Therefore, speaker B has to flout the maximum of manner and maximum of quantity in order to achieve his or her goal of communication. So these three cultural pattern of Indonesian language is a clear example on suspending a maxim. All of the violation of maxim is it does not generate implicatures, as the hearer or the receiver is satisfied with the speaker's answer to his or her question, even though the speaker speaks ambiguously or provides too much information, since the receiver are aware of the cultural pattern in that context and understand that the speaker's answer are cooperative in their cultural context. Okay, in conclusion, we have learned about the principle of cooperation, which states that people involved in an interaction implicitly, which they agree to cooperate in trying to understand what each other is trying to say. And next, there are four maxims, which are maxim of quantity, maxim of quality, maxim of relation, and maxim of manner. We also learn about the 5 ways people violate and flout the maxim. And lastly, we look at the suspension of maxim in Indonesian culture. I guess that is all from us. Thank you.